Hello my friends, it's Ann here. I'm going to show you guys how to make a marble today. So there are a couple things you need when you're making marbles. Let's start off with the first. You need a marble mold of some sort. This has got multiple sizes, which I like because I never know how much glass I'm adding and how big I want my marble to end up being. So having multiple sizes on your marble mold is beneficial, I find, or having multiple ones so that you have different sizes. You're going to need some clear. Depends on how much how big you want to make your marble. I have a couple of rods of 5mm, 6mm clear, and then I have some 8mm clear that I have purchased because I like the bigger rods to have around. So I have two of those that I'm going to start to do my marble build on. You can use the 5 to 6 mil ones, that's not a problem. It just takes longer to get enough glass on there. So the first marble that I'm going to show you how to do is called a cat's eye. Oops, boink. Had some heat cracks there when I had let it cool down. So this happens to be Zephyr clear because that's the only clear that I use. So you don't have to start your making marbles with the highest quality clear. You can start with your scrap clear to see how you're doing with it and then go from there. So right now I'm just getting a decent sized gather. This, for the cat's eye, you're going to do a paddle. So I'm getting a decent sized gather of clear on the end of one of my rods here. And then I'm going to use my parallel mashers to mash it down. If I can find them. There they are. And I'm just going to do a gentle mash. I don't need it totally squished flat. I just want to have a nice flat area to work on. Now I have a twisty that I had done that I'm going to use as my center line. You can use whatever color you want. This just happens to be what I had laying around, so I'm going to use it. So I'm heating up my stringer here that I'm going to put on my paddle, and I'm laying it like that. Okay, so I'm just picking a side and I'm laying it down on the side. Now I'm going to put a couple of these lines of stringer on there because they're kind of skinny. So I want them close together so that I don't trap air in there. Okay, so they're all on there. Now I'm going to heat them up and I'm going to parallel mash them again so that they get smushed down flatter. So that way when I add more clear, I'm not going to have pockets of air that are going to get caught in there. Alrighty, so they're on there. They're smashed clear. So the same would go if you just used a plain color. Make a swipe of that color and then down the center of your paddle and then smash it down flat. Now that that is flat, I'm going to build up my clear so that I have the size marble that I want, or as much glass as I think I want the size of my marble to end up being. So I'm just going to heat that up and swipe it over. I want this side where I've swiped the color onto to be as thick with clear as the other side is. Otherwise your cat's eye looks a little wonky if it's not quite even. It's not on center. So I'm just going to build this side up with a bunch of clear. Doesn't look like much at this point. Looks like you've got a swipe of color down a paddle of clear, and now you're adding clear on the top. You want this clear to be nice and molten that you're adding on there so that it can fill up any crevices, because you don't want a whole lot of bubbles in your cool marble. Alright, so that's about as thick as the other side is with clear. So now I'm just going to evenly keep adding to both sides, because I want this to be not a itty bitty teeny weeny marble. I want it to be a decent size. So in order to get a decent size marble, you have to get enough clear on there. So right now I'm on the other side now, and I'm just adding more clear. Now my rod that I started with is now being used as a puntee. When you're making marbles, you have to be able to switch around your puntees. You're gonna find that as we go through making this marble, you've got to be a little dynamic on where you want your puntee to be, and how those puntees are going to help you do what you need to do. Alright, so I think I've got mostly enough, I believe. I went around the ends as well of this, so it's kind of now a almost a square. I think it looks about even. So you can kind of see that looks kind of like a square. I'm going to make it a little bit more square-like, just so that I can visualize that my line of color is in the center. Now my puntee broke off, so I'm just going to heat that glass back up and stick it back together, because I'm not ready for it to be done on this side yet. It was just a shock from the cold tool coming too close to it. Alright, so now I have my little cube here. I'm going to take one of my smaller rods of clear, and I'm going to puntee up to the other side here so that I can get this what's it called, square cube here all heated up. It's easier when you've got two puntees to heat something up, so that's what I'm doing. I've got my two puntees. I've got one, I've got the one on one side and that hasn't changed, and then I've added the second one. Now I'm just heating the whole glob up, and I'm going to do my twist here. With the cat's eye, they have kind of that twist in the center, so it's not just a line of non-moving color in the center. They look kind of cool, so I'm just doing a little bit of a twirl here. I don't want a whole lot of twirl in there, because then it gets a little crazy looking, I think. So maybe 2 or 3 little swirls. And then I'm going to get this guy back into a circle, or get him into a circle for the first time, an orb, a marble. Alright, so I'm going to take off this one end, this one puntee that I added on, and to do that I'm going to I'm going to take off that puntee, and now I'm going to try and get this end tapered a little bit. To do that, I'm using that puntee that I just removed, that clear glass, and I'm trying to pull out where that colored glass is, so that it tapers down to a really fine point at the end. That's probably the hardest part of this whole thing, is getting your ends of these marbles to be tapered where that color goes down into a fine point instead of being a glob of color there on the end of your marble. Okay, so now I'm shaping this back into kind of that orb shape. The more you can do with gravity and heat, the better off you're going to be. Throwing your marble into a mold all the time is not really helpful. You should be able to, with heat control, get that marble almost into a perfect shape, round shape, before you ever put it into a mold. Now this is way wonky, so this is nowhere close to being done. I'm heating off that globs of glass that I put onto my punty by trying to taper off that end. And then I'm going to punty this up. I'm going to punty it back up to that end that I just re-rounded. And I want what's called a hot seal. So I want the glass that I'm putting on and the glass that I'm sticking to be both hot. Okay. Now I'm going to take off this other punty, the one that I started with, where I got my glass from. And I've got a decent sized glob of clear on the end of that, so I can use my tweezers here to get that off. And while I'm getting that off, I'm also going to work on tapering down the color that's in the center here of my cat's eye. And if you're super meticulous about this, you can pretty much take away your entire marble before you realize that, oh, I probably should have stopped a while ago. Alright, so now I have another clear rod that I'm going to use as a punty when I'm ready for it. You want to have a number of these extra rods sitting around while you're doing these. Otherwise you'll be hunting around for them. You need to have at least 2 punties at all time, plus then the clear that you're adding. Alright, so my little guy is coming around. He's rounding up a little bit. I don't like the way this taper is. It kind of got melted in a little, so I'm gonna try and pull it out with this other piece of clear glass. That's a better taper. Alright, so now I'm trying to round this guy up. Okay? If you're working on it and you cannot get it to round up the way you think it ought to, you can use your marble mold. Pick the larger than what you have going to help you do the shaping. The other thing is this punty that I have this marble attached to down here is out of the flame at all times. I don't want to be adding more clear off of it to my marble. At this point I'm just shaping my marble. So that is truly just hanging out of the flame. And this marble has enough heat that it's gonna keep it attached. If it falls off and plops onto your workspace, don't be surprised. When you're first learning how to do marbles, they like to do that. Even when you've been doing them for a long time, they still like to do that. When you're shaping that marble, after you've got it semi-round and you're shaping the marble, you need to pick a size on your marble mold that is one size smaller than it is to do your final tweaking of your marble. This is not my final tweaking, but I'm starting now to want to shape it. So when you're shaping it, you need to, again, I've got another punty now. I'm going to change my punty position. Okay, because I've gotten this as round as it's going to go on that side. Now I need to round up the other side. I can't do that if my punty is not attached. So I'm just getting off the other glass that I had picked off with this rod. I'm tapering this rod on my marver here down into a little point so that less of it is actually touching my marble, so that I get less of a scar on my marble from this punty glass. At least that's my hope. So now for this one, kind of getting to where I'm happy with this side of the shape, so I'm going to do what's called kind of a cold seal. It's the one I'm putting on is hot, but the one the punty I'm putting on is hot. The marble itself is kind of on the cool side. Okay. Now I have a little nipple there on the end. I don't want that to be added into my marble, so I'm going to take that off before I shape this side of my marble then. Okay. If I can't get it all off, that's fine. We just work with what we get. Now I'm rounding up this side of the marble. Okay. I'm not totally enamored with how this taper is on this side, so I'm just going to work it a little bit. See if I can't take a little bit of that color out of that area there. So again, the more you can do with gravity and heat to round your marble up, the happier you're going to be in the long run. You don't cram your marble down into the marble mold. That's not going to help you to round it. It's just going to squash it. So especially when you're working with soft glass, because this is 104 that I'm working with here today. I do boro as well. Boro, if you have some, even if it's just clear, it's really fun to make marbles out of boro. Easier than working with soft glass, but certainly it's doable to work with soft glass making marbles as well. I've made many marbles in soft glass because I wanted to use my Marini and do different things that I could not have done in the boro because I don't have any boro Marini. So my little guy is pretty darn round. Okay, I'm real happy with him. I want to keep him warm. Now to end this, if I think my marble looks pretty darn good, nice and round, I'm going to put it into my marble mold and I'm going to tap this punty that I did a cold seal and see if it pops off, and it did. It popped right on off. Then I have to find where it was attached to my marble, and I'm going to heat that area so that I don't leave a punty mark. Okay, and you don't want to super duper heat it because then it will melt flat, and you don't want to leave your marble out of the flame for too long before you get them into your kiln. So that's all there is for that marble. I'm going to put them in the kiln and I'll show them tomorrow.